Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our 2013 NFL team preview. We're taking a look at the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to break down their offense, their defense, as well as their special teams to see what we can expect from the Vikings this upcoming season.
A lot of the focus in 2013 will fall on the quarterback position, and rightfully so. Christian Ponder, who's entering his third season as a starter, has a wealth of talent at his disposal, and normally you wouldn't put so much pressure on such a young quarterback. But the difference between a guy like Ponder and a player like Andy Dalton is that you can see the growth within Dalton, where you sort of see Ponder kind of level off. Now, it doesn't mean that he can't be effective in this offense, but if you go back to his days at Florida State, what you saw then is what you see now. An athletic quarterback that struggles with accuracy and staying healthy. Now, behind him, the Vikings brought in competition in Matt Castle. Now, I'm not sure that's the difference between him and Ponder, as both guys are similar players. And that just means that this is a huge question mark for this Vikings offense. What more can you say about the best back in the league in Adrian Peterson, who last year rushed for over 2,000 yards, only less than a year removed from ACL surgery? He carried the football over 340 times at 6 yards a carry. If there were any doubt about his first ballot Hall of Fame credentials, then last year just put those thoughts to bed. Now, backing him up is Toby Gerhart, who can start for most teams in the league, in my opinion. He won't see many carries, so he's going to have to maximize his opportunities. Jerome Felton is a pretty good fullback, clearing the way for Peterson, but I'm intrigued by undrafted rookie free agent Zach Line out of SMU. Line gives him more flexibility as both a fullback and a guy that you can utilize in a single back situation. If for the unfortunate situation that Peterson is out, Gerhart and Line, in my opinion, are more than capable to keep the offense on schedule. This was a big question mark for the Vikings last year, and some pointed to this position as the reason why Ponder struggled. So in the offseason, priority number one was to rectify the problem, and they accomplished that in a big way. The first move was signing vet Greg Jennings from the Green Bay Packers, and Jennings gives them a legit number one option who's still in his prime. Also, in the draft, the Vikings traded back into the first round to select Cordero Patterson out of Tennessee. Patterson graded out as my number one wide receiver in the draft because of his game-breaking abilities. The things Patterson can do with the football in his hands are extraordinary, and the Vikes not only got themselves a steal, but a guy that can draw coverage away from Jennings, giving them a potent 1-2 punch. In the slot, I think Jarius Wright should get more of a look as opposed to Jerome Simpson, Webb, Stephen Burton, amongst others. I think Wright is another example of an explosive player that can frustrate a defense. And keep an eye on undrafted rookie free agent Rodney Smith out of Florida State, 6'5", 220 pounds, saw him down at the East-West Shrine game, and he would be an ideal red zone target. At tight end, Kyle Rudolph is one of the better young tight ends in the league. He's also one of the few well-rounded tight ends and should benefit from the addition of both Jennings and Patterson, and could also use some help from the number 2 tight end, John Carlson, who's looking to have a bounce-back season. When you look at H-back Rhett Ellison, he had a productive rookie season and gives them a lot more flexibility within their offense. This is one of the better offensive lines in the league. It shows you what youth, talent, and continuity can do for an offensive front. Last year, first-round pick Matt Khalil was as good as advertised and has solidified the left tackle spot. And they also re-signed Phil Lodeholt in the offseason to lock down the right side of the line of scrimmage, giving them 2 solid bookends. Now, on the interior, Charlie Johnson, who played out of position prior to Khalil's arrival, became the team's best guard last year as he moved down inside. And Brandon Fusco is entering his 3rd season out of Slippery Rock Division II program, got better each and every week. When we look at center John Sullivan, he rounds out that starting 5, and he's one of the top centers in the game. In the draft, they wanted to bolster the depth with versatile guys that can play multiple positions. And when I look at guys like Jeff Bach out of UCLA and Travis Bond out of North Carolina, who's 6'7", 320 pounds, I think they accomplished that in a good way. And Joe Berger is a valuable veteran backup that they could have along that offensive front. And I'm still holding out hope for 2011 6th-round draft pick LaMarcus Love to finally realize his immense potential. This is a veteran group led by 2 of the league's best in defensive end, Jared Allen, and defensive tackle, Kevin Williams. Both have double-digit experience in the league, but Williams is on the wrong side of 32. He's still solid, but he's not dominant anymore, and that's where rookie first-round pick Sharif Floyd comes into play. Floyd finally put it all together last year for the Florida Gators and shows great potential as a one-gap penetrator. Getting that rotation going with Floyd, Williams, and nose tackle LaTroy Guillen should help keep that interior defensive line fresh while increasing production at the same time. I also like what they have in defensive tackle Christian Ballard out of Iowa, who's a versatile player that can play multiple spots on that defensive line, even lining up at defensive end if need be. Now, Jared Allen is still on the better side of 30 because he still can get to the quarterback. Allen led the team last year in sacks with 12, and second on the team in sacks was Brian Roberson with 8.5. But in my personal opinion, I think Everson Griffin, who had 8 sacks, would give them much more of a presence on the opposite side because of his tremendous athleticism. Lawrence Jackson also provides quality depth, and I want you to keep an eye on undrafted rookie free agent Marquise Jackson out of Portland State, another guy that played at the FCS level that provides some intriguing pass rushing options. There's a slight question mark about the linebacking core for the Minnesota Vikings. On the outside, they have one of my favorite players in the league in Chad Greenway. Greenway led the team in tackles last year with 191, and he's a player that's impactful in both the running game as well as in coverage. He also re-signed Aaron Henderson on the inside, who's a pretty decent player but is inconsistent. I bet he'll be pushed by free agent signee Desmond Bishop, who was arguably the Packers' best inside linebacker. At the weak side linebacker spot is where there's a concern. The plan is for Marvin Mitchell to start the season, but I'm willing to bet you'll see 2013 4th-round draft pick Gerald Hodges out of Penn State step in as the guy, as he showed good ability in that capacity last year for the Nittany Lions. And I'm a big fan of Audie Cole, but the problem is they can't find a way to get him on the football field. At 6'5", 240 pounds, he has some intriguing athletic skills that can be utilized as a strong side backer or even as a middle backer. Now, outside of that, depth is a major concern with this unit. This was another area of concern, especially with the departure of longtime Viking Antoine Winfield, and that's why in the first round the Vikings selected Xavier Rhodes out of Florida State. At 6'2", 212 pounds, Rhodes has the size and physicality at the line of scrimmage with wide receivers and also the coverage ability to play man-to-man. And they're hoping the talented 6'2" corner on the opposite side, Chris Cook, can become a more consistent player and stay on the field for a full 16-game season. In the slot, I like what I saw last year from Josh Robinson, who showed the ups and downs of a rookie, but the good far outweighed the bad, so I think they have what they want right there in Robinson. And we look at A.J. Jefferson, he also provides depth as the nickel and dime guy. Back on the back end at the safety spot, they struck gold last year with Harrison Smith, who has Darren Sharper-like skills, both as a feared enforcer in the running game and also as a center fielder. He had 3 interceptions last season. Jamarcus Sanford and Mr. Raymond are constantly battling it out for the other safety spot, and Sanford has proven to be the better player, always winning the job. Now, talent isn't a question anymore for this unit, but consistency still is, and that's something they're going to have to find in 2013. In the special teams unit, you have to love the kicking game for the Vikings. You like what you saw last year out of the Blair Walsh project, which was in full effect last season. He hit on 92% of his field goals and went a perfect 10 for 10 from 50+. They also drafted one of the best punters in the country in Jeff Locke in the 5th round out of UCLA, who has a booming leg and excels in directional punting. Now, the return game will be held by a couple of guys. You look at Jarius Wright, can excel as a punt or kickoff returner, and you also look at cornerback Marcus Sherrills, who did a great job in that capacity last season. So overall, I have no questions about the Vikings special teams unit. I think they're pretty solid. Now let's take a look at what the Vikings have. They have the best running back in the league, and that right there is going to keep you in every ball game. It could win you a couple of games as well. You saw it led them to the playoffs, and they have strength on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They're strong on both of the offensive line and the defensive line. And the excellent kicking game, they don't understand, a lot of people don't understand how important that kicking game is. Once you cross the 50-yard line, you're in range for Blair Walsh. That way you can have a chance to win some games late or come away with points on every drive. Now, what the Vikings lack, they don't have solid quarterback play or they don't have solid quarterback depth. That's a huge concern going into the season. They don't have the depth at linebacker. We talked about that earlier. They don't have the consistency in the secondary as of yet. They're still waiting for guys like Chris Cook to find that level of consistency, and they're also depending on a lot of young guys, and Xavier Rhodes, who's a rookie, and Josh Robinson going into his 2nd season. So they have to find that consistency in the secondary to get where they want to be. Reason for optimism for the Vikings: this is a team that made the playoffs last year despite not having adequate weapons at the receiver position and consistent play from the quarterback. So now you add Greg Jennings, Cordero Patterson, and now you hope to get better QB play from Christian Ponder. This team can still make the playoffs because they're solid on the defensive line, they're solid on the offensive line, and they have a very good special teams unit. The cause for concern for the Vikings would be if Christian Ponder doesn't get off to a good start and they have to go to Matt Castle, who also will play like Christian Ponder. They have to find a level of consistency with that QB position. I know I keep stressing that throughout the video. Another concern would be if the linebacker depth becomes a problem or if the secondary doesn't hold up their end of the bargain. That's the biggest questions, areas of concern I have for the Vikings this year. The road to the Super Bowl for the Vikings goes as follows. The passing game has to take off. They've added weapons. They got talent. They have good tight ends. So they have to take off and help this offense become more balanced. 2, the cornerbacks have to step up, become more of a presence on the field because the defensive line will get pressure. It's up to the cornerbacks to make plays on the ball. And 3rd, both sides of that line of scrimmage have to stay intact. They had a good chance last year to make a run. They missed the quarterback play, but the offensive line and defensive line stayed healthy throughout the course of the season. That's the real reason why the Vikings were as dominant as they were up front. I have the Vikings finishing 3rd in the NFC North. This is the only question I have about this football team, and it's that quarterback position. Because when you look at these guys top to bottom, you have to like what you see at the receiver position. They have the best running back in the game. The offensive line is top notch on the defense side of football. They got pass rushers. They got depth on the interior. They got 2 solid linebackers that can start right away in Henderson and Greenway and even Desmond Bishop. The secondary improved. Everything hinges on the quarterback position. They even got great special teams play. So if they can get consistent play from the quarterback position, they can find themselves in the playoffs. If they can get excellent play from the quarterback position, they can easily win the division and get a home game in those said playoffs. But overall, it has to start with the QB play, and that's going to be the biggest key for success or failure in this Vikings season. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Viking fan forums for always showing football game plan support.